This maybe happens like 2 or 3 times a century. There is some Goliath, in our case it's Google, who seems impenetrable and is completely untoppable. And a couple times a century, like you'll see a little chink in the armor. And why would you not go for that? And for us, working on Grass every day, it's like, why not us? The internet's becoming more closed. Web 1 was just going to random URLs and like exploring. It's green fields. Web 2 was a phone and a few apps. A few apps are kind of your window into the internet. And now AI, maybe one model, is going to end up being your one window into the internet. We're currently talking to enterprises that are outside of AI and looking to kind of grow our exposure there. But AI has been a beautiful wedge into like the overall data market because it's the fastest growing. And in general, it's just the most exciting industry in the world.
Thanks for joining. We last had you on in May of 2024 with Sami Kassab, if you remember him. So it was one of our most widely viewed episodes. I think it went like an hour. It's one I enjoyed a lot. But just from a very high level, like what would you say has changed about the AI or crypto landscape since then? I think a lot's gone on, but curious your take.
Yeah, okay, well, that's a good question. I'd say a ton has changed in both landscapes. I think the last time we spoke, the world was expecting a bit more of a convergence between the two technologies. I think there was a lot of hope that because they're two emergent technologies that had like tons of capital flowing into them and tons of just white space in terms of opportunity, that there would be like this really huge intersection between them. And I have, I guess, spoken about this a few times before, but I do think that intersection ended up being much smaller than people expected. And I think people's expectations have now re-rated. And if anything, have probably kind of gone to the other side of the pendulum where a lot of folks don't think that the two of those will really interact at all, maybe, which I also disagree with. But yeah, as far as like what's changed, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't spend that much time following the latest cutting edge like crypto developments. But I do know that there's some really exciting stuff happening right now with like FHE and a lot of integration with like non-crypto capital markets, which I think is a really good thing for the space in moderation. In moderation, I think it's a good thing for the space. In particular, I think Kyle's been doing some pretty cool stuff with the Forward Industries vehicle. But on the AI side, I think it was like right before reasoning traces and like reasoning models really took off. So like the last time that we spoke, it was a year and a half ago. There was all kinds of talk about scaling because up until then, I think we saw GPT-3, 3.5, and 4 come out in quick succession, and then immediately 5, 6 big major AI companies started dropping models that were constantly crushing benchmarks. And it was one of those things where you'd see at the time, you could kind of see the benchmarks and see that this, new model crushed another one on a certain benchmark. And then you can go and try the model for yourself and actually feel that difference in evals. And that's because at the time, like models are still benefiting from scaling. And there was like this really big thing, where people were saying, okay, let's throw more compute, more data, and by transitivity, more parameters at all of those models, and they'll get infinitely better. Maybe if we make a quadrillion parameter model, it will cure cancer and take us to the moon and whatever, So I think a lot of people's expectations have gotten level set from there. And a big reason for that is because like, in AI, just like in nature, scaling in like a single dimension always has limits.
Diminishing marginal returns, yeah.
You end up getting to like a certain part of the S curve, which is totally fine, right? And I think one thing that the major AI labs of the world have done very intelligently was quickly and efficiently realizing when to change the dimension to scale. So instead of throwing, creating more parameters, like there was this mixture of experts thing, right? And then it was like, okay, let's scale test time compute, and then you kind of keep going down and finding new things that you can scale to get you back to like really good improvements in other ways.
I think DeepSeek was probably a big part of that too, right? In terms of like that company not having access to the types of chips that maybe OpenAI did, but they were still able to put out a very performant model against benchmarks.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's one of those things where if the really expensive to train, like high parameter, like models that were put out into the world before DeepSeek never occurred, DeepSeek wouldn't occur either. It's like the lessons that you learn from actually scaling to that size. And then like only once you've done it can you figure out, okay, looking back, we could have cut this out and this out and this out and gotten a really efficient model that's only good at the stuff that's actually useful. And then people started pruning, a lot of stuff from these models and saying, okay, let's do stuff with more data and less parameters, for instance. So I think it was like only a matter of time, and like we shouldn't be surprised if there are more DeepSeek moments, right, of realization where it's like, oh wait, we can add another layer of efficiency here, right? Or like, I guess, remove a layer.
Well, I think that's good framing, like industry-wise, and I think a lot of our listeners will remember in terms of Grass specific events, like the Chrome extension was in full swing. You're around like 2 million, 3 million contributors globally. You were kind of the talk of the town. TG and airdrop were imminent. Solana L2 plans had just been published. So maybe instead of asking you like what Grass is up to today, maybe the question's better framed in the conversation we were just having in terms of like, how is Grass staying on top of all the changes that are happening in the AI industry in terms of like hindsight being 2020, AI labs, changing their focus in terms of this diminishing marginal returns from scaling compute or scaling a type of training or anything else. Like, how do you guys stay on top of all those changes?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some really great connections in the most advanced like research institutions in the world, and we tend to be very good at positioning ourselves properly for like when some of these big swings in the AI industry are still like in the early stages. The biggest one I would say that's lasted a lot longer than expected has been multimodal scaling. So I guess text-based models, like they've kind of reached a point where they're really, really good, right? Now people are trying to make like coding models. Like imagine 5 years ago, someone told you that they're trying to train AI models that are as good as PhDs at like math tasks. So now people are really kind of, I wouldn't say it's called nitpicking, but people are trying to really specialize these models and get them really individual tasks. One area that's surprisingly gone under the radar for the general public, although I think that's going to change very soon, has been multimodal, and the fact that multimodal models are still benefiting from insane gains from scaling. So what I mean by multimodal is text-to-speech models, for instance. Like getting text-to-speech models like good enough where they're considered solved. Like we're not quite there yet. There are some companies out there doing incredible things, and they're making serious progress like month over month. But there's still a lot of room to grow and to scale in that direction. Video models, image models as well. So like all these multimodal models like are still benefiting from scaling, and we think that's going to continue for maybe another 12 to 18 months before we start seeing diminishing returns the way that we saw in other areas of AI just from brute force scaling.
And do you think those multimodal models, that's a mouthful, are benefiting from scaling compute because they're kind of like behind the learning curve of more like text-based chatbot kind of models? Or why do you think that is?
Honestly, it's because the data is just extremely scarce. It's...
Gotcha.
Yeah, like you can go and, well, before the AI explosion, it was a lot easier to do. But you could go and train a big language model on the entire corpus of Common Crawl, and then add a bunch of other domains that aren't properly represented there, and then fine tune and like have a really good model for that. To get that quantity of data in video, for example, you need 100 times more data, like 100 times more storage, 100 times more scraping capacity to extract it from the web. And there are a lot of other dimensions in which it needs to get better, right? Like if you think about a language model, just kind of from first principles, it's like, what do you want it to be good at? You want it to have the impression of some understanding of emotions and sentence structure. Like, and you want to have seen enough like logical sequences where it can kind of reconstruct things that feel like, it's reasoning, or I feel like there's some logic going on. If you're looking at video models, you care about blur, production quality, how quickly the camera is moving, colors, animation style, like whether it's realistic, other things like that. And then there's physics. You have to incorporate all the physics into these things. And we're seeing some, well, our customers are seeing, I don't want to take credit for it, but our customers are seeing promising results where you can kind of scale these video models and without much interference, they can start to pick up and quote unquote learn, physics principles, right? It's like have the appearance of like following physics. But to a large part, there's still so much room left to grow and so much room for improvement, which I think makes it still like an incredibly exciting space.
Yeah, I guess it sounds like both the inputs and the outputs for multimodal models are much more complex, much larger in terms of storage space they take up. Like, so all of those things kind of lead to compute being, I guess, more valuable. Let's talk about LCR, live context retrieval, which is a term you guys taught me, and I think a lot of people on crypto Twitter. But the way that I kind of understood it back then and also now was when you would ask ChatGPT or a chatbot about some kind of date or event. I think I actually asked it about the Olympics. It didn't know the Olympics had happened, even though they had happened a couple of weeks ago, because there was this kind of 6 to 12 month backdate cutoff in terms of like its knowledge and its learning. That has mostly gone away in my experience in terms of like I can kind of query ChatGPT about events that happened yesterday, and it seems to have caught up. So I'm curious, like, has there been an improvement there? If so, what is it? And then also like how Grass is involved in live context retrieval, if there's anything you can share about kind of work with labs or foundational models or anything like that, would be curious to hear.
Yeah, happy to. Just out of my own curiosity, how often do you use ChatGPT?
It's an everyday thing at this point, which is crazy to say, but multiple times a day.
Oh yeah,
every day.
I think a lot of us are in that boat. And how often, when you ask it something or talk to it, how often does it search the web?
I think it's becoming increasingly common for it to do that.
Yeah.
So sure. It'll say like searching web action, and then you see like the Reddit and a couple other logos pop up, and then it's, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so like, it's fairly clear that the demand for search for LLMs is only going to increase, right? Like the need for LLMs to search the web is only going up because it fills such an important gap, like the knowledge gap that actually makes them useful and gives them product market fit, right?
And they're replacing the browser, I think. Like I do a lot of product searching to buy things through LLMs as well, which is crazy.
We talked about this a while ago. We said that AI is the real Web3, right? Because the internet's becoming more closed. Web 1 was just going to random URLs and like exploring. It's green fields, right? Web 2 was a phone and a few apps. A few apps are kind of your window into the internet. And now AI, like a couple of models, maybe one model is going to end up being your one window into the internet, right? Which is sort of a scary world. If you look at it from that perspective, it's also an exciting world if things are done properly. Now, I guess about live context retrieval. The reason I asked you about how often you use ChatGPT and how often it searches the web is because I guess I want to make it. I find that just saying like, oh, the need for this is going to increase. It's like people can conceptualize that when you say it to them, but it feels a lot more real when it's anecdotal, and you can really like measure the impact a little better, at least emotionally, when you're when you think about your day-to-day usage and how it's only been increasing in the last few months, and how like the number of those little logos that appears keeps increasing every time. Now, the way that most major AI companies search the web is something that would probably surprise a lot of people. Right. A lot of people don't really think about it. They're like, oh, my AI is searching the web. Right. You don't. And it's a totally normal thing. Right. 90% of the time, I drive a car, I don't think about what's going on under the hood. Right. But when you're prompting an LLM and it starts searching the web, what's actually going on under the hood is it is scraping Google search, it's scraping Bing search, it's scraping Baidu, it's scraping Yandex, it's scraping major search engines around the world. And the way it scrapes is the way it scrapes it is it'll go and put a prompt into the search bar like programmatically, and then it'll return a list of results, and then it'll just download those links as HTML, and then it'll scrape the source pages, or just take the snippets, and then synthesize all of that into your context window, and then your LLM kind of has all the information that it would have gotten from searching the web. Now, because these search engines are built for humans, not for AI, usually the top 5 results are kind of useless. They're like some kind of advertisement or something that got scammed up there by SEO, right? So what they'll do is they'll probably read the first like 100 results and then throw all of those results into the context window. And the models are pretty good now. Like they can kind of figure out what's relevant and what isn't, but it needs to pick up all those things first. You kind of think about it and it's like, well, why don't they just crawl the web themselves, right? Like, it sounds very unsustainable to just scrape another search engine. Like you're rotating your IP address constantly, right? Like they're paying residential proxy networks to go and scrape search engines. Why do that when you can just build your own crawl and not do it? And not have to worry about scraping another company. The reason is actually pretty interesting. It's because they keep getting blocked, right? Like OpenAI themselves, they put out this like during the Google antitrust proceedings, executives of OpenAI literally went out there and said in front of the whole world, we've been trying to build our own web crawl. Our goal is to have half of our search running through that web crawl by now. It doesn't look like it's going to be possible until at least 2029 because we keep getting blocked. And you've been hearing this again and again from the major AI companies where they don't really have access to an independent web crawl, like an actual web crawl that is built custom made for LLMs, right? Now, there are some startups in Silicon Valley that have extremely high residential proxy spend that are trying to build, APIs for this. The way it often works is they'll take 10 billion or like 1 billion keywords and spam Google and a few other search engines with that and just scrape the results of that. And then they'll go and run all of it through a neural network once a day and to reorder them and have their own page rank based on other search engines. So like once a day, it scrapes all of them with a bunch of different keywords, tracks like the new results, and reorders them. So like that's another option, right? But all of these roads end up going back to scraping existing search engines. One thing that I think is actually terrifying for the future of AI is the fact that if Google tomorrow said, hey, starting now, if you want to search something, on Google search, if you're not logged in with your Google account, we will show you last week's results or last month's results. So if you open it in incognito and search it, it'll give you like last month's results. So it's still usable, but it's not usable by an LLM. And if you want real time, you need to sign in. I can see this happening, and like our projection for this happening was maybe sometime in 2027, maybe 2028. But now I'm beginning to worry that might happen a little earlier than we thought. Main reasons, other than them just constantly increasing, their anti-bot, is the fact that I think it was last week, they made a change where you can no longer update the number of results that show up on a search. So you used to be able to say it's 25 or 10 or 100, right, on per page. Now, obviously, if an LLM is scraping it, they're going to choose the biggest number possible. They'll choose 100. And then they lowered that limit. And I think that was a signal that kind of went unnoticed by most of the world.
I saw you tweet about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But all of a sudden, it got 4 times more expensive to scrape Google because you can only show 25 results instead of 100. So now you have to go and scrape 4 pages instead of 1, which is a huge deal if you think about the scale at which these things are scraping. So, and then, just a few other data points. Bing search, they used to have an API. They took it down for reasons. I have a kind of an understanding of what happened there, but the TLDR is that there were competitive reasons for which they stopped offering their API. But to give an understanding of just how expensive and how valuable this is, their API list price If I'm remembering correctly, it was $10 or $20 per 1,000 searches. Now you think about, well, when you search something, it's getting, well, how many searches is it doing on every ChatGPT query? Like maybe 5, maybe 10 sometimes. If it's doing a deep research, it's doing way more than that. Right. So then you can really see how that racks up across like the whole AI industry. Okay, no, so back to Grass, right? We noticed that Grass has this really unique opportunity because it's fully vertically integrated, right? The Grass Foundation owns like a bunch of space in data center. It has a huge data center footprint at this point with like literally petabytes. It's going to be exabytes soon, storage. Tons and tons of compute, both CPU and GPU based, and we're growing the GPU side of that. And most importantly, the Grass nodes themselves, the people that have installed the Grass apps, like the Grass extension, the Grass desktop app, the Grass mobile app. Because Grass actually is vertically integrated from the nodes to the compute to the storage, everything else, it has this unique opportunity to actually build a cost-efficient API or MCP or whatever you want to call it, that retrieves data from an actual internet scale web browser. So like the idea is to use millions and millions of nodes on the Grass network to go and do what all the AI labs can't do because they keep getting blocked, and go and crawl the entire internet on like a very regular basis and serve insane amounts of search to AI labs. And AI search, you can already see kind of the writings on the wall. AI search is going to surpass human search very quickly. Like the AI is searching versus people typing things into a search bar. It's going to be an order of magnitude difference very, very soon. So it's an incredibly large market. It's an incredible undertaking. And right now I'd say like the one bottleneck that we've got is getting more nodes on the network to get to become purely unblockable and doing those.
Okay. So maybe catch us up on the supply side of Grass in terms of roughly how many nodes you're at now, where you'd like to get to be unblockable, and then maybe how like the mobile apps, the Grasshopper hardware, kind of these different products you've rolled out play a role or a part in the supply side kind of growth of the network.
I think the last time we spoke, we were at 2 or 3 million users on the extension. The desktop app was around the corner, or it was just out, something like that. And that at the time, that was total users. Right now, in terms of monthly active, we're at 8 million. In terms of at any given moment, like we have guaranteed 1 million or more connections online. That's the number that probably matters the most, right? Like at any given moment, what is the minimum number of connections that are available? The minimum number of IP addresses that we can tap into. And I think that number needs to 30 to 50x, if I'm being completely honest, for us to accomplish everything that we want to accomplish. And like if you think about it as a consumer application that you download to get paid for something that's already happening to you, that number is like nowhere near being out of reach for us. So it, the way we're looking at, growth of the network is from a few different angles. One of them is distribution methods, right? The Grasshopper is coming out soon. For those that are familiar, it's a box that you can just plug into your home internet router, and it enables insane things for the Grass network. It is capable of doing way, way, way more throughput. I've tweeted some benchmarks before, but it's incredibly higher throughput. So when you're looking at things like multimodal data, if you're trying to scrape insane numbers of images or audio or things like that, that ends up being extremely helpful. Because in reality, right now, if you're using the Grass network to go and scrape multimedia, you probably need to scrape different parts of the file from different connections in order to do it efficiently, because people turn off their phone or they go into low bandwidth area of their home or something like that. So having this device constantly online, constantly connected, enables some really cool things. Beyond connectivity, though, it actually has a mini operating system living on it. That operating system can do things like hosting browsers, which can enable things like agentic workflows on residential networks, which unlocks incredible things, right? If you want to have some sort of AI agent doing something on your behalf, Um, you know, most people don't actually want a bunch of background processes running on their device that they're using. They'd rather have that happening somewhere else. So imagine you could have, some device that, leverages your network and other things like that. And they can just kind of do those things for you locally. Or if you're not even, I mean, beyond that, if you're not even using it for that, allowing it, enabling others to go and rent the ability to scrape things from fully hosted browsers. That on its own is a massive industry right now. And like a lot of people will be kind of shocked to hear that the way Google scrapes a lot of the internet is they host a bunch of Chromium browsers in their servers. And the purpose of those Chrome browsers is to actually open sites that like need to load code to display the data in them. So you can't do that without a browser. So they have like a bunch of servers with operating systems with browsers that are just literally opening websites to read the data. And like the Grasshopper will unlock that functionality for us. So like there's an entire world of other things that can be built on top of it once the distribution is there. So, but for now, the V1, if you'll call it, of the operating system will be just like this really high throughput node. But like the possibilities are almost endless. And the goal for us is really to, obviously the goal is not for the foundation to go and like make money, like profiting from selling a box. I feel like that's kind of a temptation that a lot of like DePIN projects fell into. The idea is to just maximize for distribution. So I think people will be very excited when it comes out. So anyways, like distribution methods, other ones are, we're looking at too are things like Roku TV apps, for example. Like how often if your TV's on all day, even if it's on standby, it's on no matter what. You might as well go and like make a couple of bucks by renting out some of your unused bandwidth, right? Through your TV. And these are great because they're high bandwidth, high throughput, always available. And, other devices too. So yeah, distribution methods, that's one way that we're looking at things. The other lens too is actually tapping into the crypto side of things. One thing that we noticed ever since, the token launched was whenever there was a lot of excitement around the Grass token, we did see small upticks in registrations and like people joining the network. And the funny thing is when that excitement would go, we had incredible, like over 90% retention. Why would you uninstall something that's going to pay you no matter what, right?
Right.
Unless you're breaking rules or doing something bad, right? But if you're just a normal person that downloaded this thing during some moment of hype, like why would you ever uninstall it? So retention's been incredible. So I guess like those are the two avenues that we see it is like tapping into like kind of the more crypto native community that rallies around Grass. And I feel like that's something that's extremely exciting. And we haven't even seen, anywhere near how powerful that can get. I'm happy to chat about that a bit more. And then like the other one too is distribution.
Maybe we'll see you at the next crypto conference then. and maybe this is a good time to ask about like how you categorize yourselves. Are you a DePIN? Are you not? Are you an AI project? Like it kind of seems like you're building products for the AI industry with kind of a DePIN supply chain or like contributor base. But I mean, you're the founder, like how do you categorize yourselves in this kind of hybrid world?
Well, I'm one of the co-founders, but so I mean this in like a nice way. Like I think categories are silly. For the most part, I think, saying, okay, but you're right? Like Grass is a protocol that builds products and services, the AI industry, almost exclusively AI these days, but it's not limited to that, right? Like we're currently talking to enterprises that are outside of AI and looking to kind of grow our exposure there. But AI has been a beautiful wedge into like the overall data market because it's the fastest growing. It's the shortest sales cycle from an enterprise perspective. And in general, I think it's just objectively the most exciting industry in the world. Now, if you look at, if you want to look at categories and saying, okay, this is, a DePIN, I guess like decentralized physical infrastructure network. We're not really doing something in the physical world, if that makes sense, right? Like we're not building robots that are going to be controlled by different things. We're not laying lines to connect data centers from like Chicago to New York or things like that. So I don't know, but like if people want to call Grass like DePIN, I'm not going to complain about it. I'll as you saw, like I'll say my opinion, which is I don't think it's in the same category as these things. But if people want to categorize it, I'm not gonna be upset. I think at the end of the day, the thing that matters more than any of those things is the fact that we are doing something that's valuable for our customers, and we are making sure that everyone in the world that's downloaded Grass and is contributing to Grass is able to just kind of benefit from that. Like, I feel like it's one of those things where as long as we prioritize like maximizing, our output for customers, everything else kind of falls like dominoes. It might take longer or shorter than some people expect, but I think just from first principles, that's what makes the most sense.
Right. And the way you create your product and maximize its output for your customers is really utilizing all these people around the world and their machines. And so it makes sense that you're, compensating them for that. But maybe in terms of some of the products or kind of tools that I've seen available on X, or at least the public facing stuff, maybe it's less enterprise, or maybe it's what the enterprises are using. But if you could just give us a quick overview of ClipTagger 12B, which is a funny name, and the Grass video search, and just the things that like people can go and try out today in terms of like the product and to see the service you're providing and how it works.
So we get that question a lot because we have a very excited community of people that are not necessarily AI enterprises that want to come in and buy 150 petabytes of data or something like that. And they're like, well, how can I use this for other stuff? So ClipTagger 12B, so 12B, it's called 12B because 12 billion parameter model, was a joint initiative with a company called InferenceNet. I've got like nothing but the best things to say about those guys. Incredible team, incredible talents. They're building something really special. And it was one of those things where, we've been in touch with them for quite a while, and we saw a need from, an enterprise strategic perspective to go and label and make a certain subset of the Grass video repository searchable, right? And we said, okay, what's the best way to make this searchable? And we sort of came up with this schema of, okay, we want to be able to detect logos, for example. Some companies want to track logos and remove them or whatever it might be. We want to go and determine what actions are happening so we can filter things for fine-tuning video models, like stuff like that. And now that's a huge undertaking. And at the time, the best model to do that, it was one of the Google models, right? It was Gemini. And if you ask anyone from like Google Cloud Services, hey, how much would it cost to, do, I don't know, I think trillions of tokens of inference of Gemini, they'll kind of laugh and give you some number that makes no sense. So like it just it was fiscally irresponsible to use that as a solution. However, the folks at InferenceNet had a much more elegant idea, which was like, hey, you guys have crazy amounts of video data. We have state-of-the-art technology and talent for training and serving inference in small models. Let's just do this. So, we kind of got together, provided, the data specifications, some filtering, things like that. And they trained this thing and hosted it on their network. And now anyone in the world can go and label clips or like keyframes from videos and make them searchable. And it was kind of a fun moment, right, on social media where people from all over the world who've never done anything in AI got to go and use a product that was being promoted by Grass, right? Like where you can go and people were uploading pictures of random things, and the inference guys had a little competition. It was a lot of fun, and it was really cool. And it's been an incredibly useful tool for us just internally with respect to serving certain types of demand. And I think that's only going to grow. Now, one of the things that we've been looking at doing for a long time as well was saying, okay, well, we've got the biggest multimodal data repository in the world. Well, it's the third biggest, I guess. The top two are probably YouTube, TikTok. I don't know. It's one of the top in the world, right? And it was like, okay, well, there are so many people who spend so much time trying to find just things that are happening in frames of videos. They can find the exact timestamp of something, trying to find exact moments, or whether you're clipping stuff, whether you're an advertising agency, whether you're doing Call of Duty montages, I don't know, random things like that. Or even if you're just a brand that wants to monitor, like how often is our logo showing up in certain videos, for instance, or how much is this new product showing up? We realize that there's like this unserved need to make a lot of the internet's videos searchable semantically. So by applying ClipTagger to a bunch of the keyframes of videos, you're actually able to go and make them searchable because it outputs the schema that you can go and then host on a vector database and just search. Now, the original idea, I guess, was to make the entire Grass video repository searchable. And I think that's still the idea. But I think the way that this will be rolled out and the way that we've been doing things is we have this closed beta that anyone can just email the foundation, you'll get a code and you can kind of go and play around with it and submit feedback. And all that feedback goes into iteration. But the way it's been rolled out from an enterprise perspective is we're talking to companies and saying, okay, which channels or like areas of the internet would you like to monitor videos in? You give us those and then we'll build like almost like a custom Grass video search tool for you. And then I think after a certain point, once we've scaled compute enough, because that's been a bit of a bottleneck, and once we've scaled inference and bandwidth and a few other things, we're going to have we're just going to open it up to anyone in the world to just use. Anyone can just go and self-serve and pay for some plan, and we expect most of the usage to be API based, but some people might just be using it for other fun applications. So that'll be pretty exciting. And we also have a few other scraping products, right? I did mention that I do think scraping search engines is kind of an unsustainable practice, but at the same time, you can use Grass to do that pretty well. So one of the engineers on our team kind of just went and built that in a week using Grass. Like when you have a lot of people like working on Grass because of this really incredible resource that operates as a layer, right? It's like you don't have to worry at all about like fiddling and making sure that your script doesn't get blocked by some website. You can kind of just build something that extracts any information from the internet. So it's like a really fun place to work. So it took one of the engineers on our team like a week to just go and build an API that scrapes search engines. So we'll probably make the search engine result page API public and available for self-serve relatively soon, and then kind of release other products along those lines as well. By far, the most popular stuff though that we've been doing is in multimodal and like accessing vast quantities of multimodal data. Now, in order to serve some of like the major customers that are asking for this type of thing, you actually end up needing to build a pseudo custom solution for them. You have to go and provision like entire racks of servers in a data center and say, okay, this is going to be dedicated to this customer for like the duration of how long they need it, and then you kind of set it up that way. So like I think a lot of people in the Grass community were saying, hey, how do I how does someone go and sign up for this? Like the reality is there's less than 100 companies in the world, but they're massive that need multimodal downloading plus like segmentation, filtering, other stuff that gets added on top as an add-on. And those like 100 or so companies, like it ends up just being a conversation, right? Where it's like it's very enterprisey. You kind of come to an agreement on pricing and it closes. So
yeah, so you've kind of given an overview of maybe some use cases and different products. And it sounds like a lot are in development, or even can be kind of tinkered with and built by the community because there's kind of this ecosystem and this infrastructure layer you've built underneath. But maybe what can you share about any like large customer names or pilots or different projects you've worked on, or any kind of like revenue that When Labs or the Grass Network is doing, anything like that?
So we get this question a lot. So what I can share is that we work with about 20 companies today. Well, I shouldn't say company, like companies, nonprofits, research organizations and universities. And they range from some of the top AI labs in the world to startups. And I feel weird calling AI companies startups because they have hundreds of millions on their balance sheet. But in the AI world, I guess the definition of a startup has just sort of shifted. And then all the way to, just nonprofit initiatives, open source research initiatives, things like that. Of the top AI labs, I would say that we work or have done work with 3 of them. Now, nowadays, like most of the compute that's being spent on just AI in general is being spent on AI training, like training models, right? And because most of the compute that's being spent on training, most of the data that's being purchased by AI companies is training data. And the way training data sales work is like, it's not a recurring thing, right? They're not going to be training this model forever, right? They're going to train the model once and then they'll train the next model, or they'll have to fine tune something. So the way it works is like, there's this initial few spikes in demand, and then they kind of go and do like all the really difficult work that goes into training these models, and then they come back, and then then a company will need to they'll need some smaller subset of things to fine tune, or they'll need like another huge chunk of data to do whatever they're doing. So I wouldn't really refer to it as like ARR or anything like that, but the way the vast majority of revenue works for the protocol is like it's tied to training cycles, right? And those vary based on the customer. Moving forward, I do think as AI matures, all the compute, like data centers that are being built by these AI companies, those aren't being built because they think they're going to build like the biggest models and like insanely large models that are just going to get infinitely bigger. Like that's not, they will get bigger, don't get me wrong. But the reason they're building these huge data centers is because they're betting on themselves. Like they're betting on the fact that AI usage is going to go up 10x, 100x, maybe 1000x. And they're going to need the ability to serve all of that inference. And at a certain point, like the demand for compute, I'm using compute as kind of a proxy here, right? Basically the demand for AI, or like the work that goes into AI, will be mostly training up until sometime maybe in the middle of next year, where we predict it'll be flipped by the demand for inference. And around the time that gets flipped, that's when things like live context retrieval become extremely interesting. And that's where I think the Grass as a protocol, like revenue, will sort of morph from being this, like, don't get me wrong, things are going, growth has been incredible, but like it'll change from being tied to training cycles and kind of happening in like these discrete moments to looking a little bit more continuous. And yeah, just basically following like kind of more of I want to say like more like a SaaS type pattern. Yeah. And like you asked about revenue figures as well. So we haven't published like official figures or anything like that. But I've seen a very interesting tweet the other day, where some, I forget who it was. Somebody was displaying, like DePIN revenue generated month over month for the last year and a half. One thing that I thought was incredible was how quickly that's grown over the last year and a half, right? I think it was like $200,000 or $300,000 a month. And then the month of August, so last month, it was $1.6 million, if I'm not mistaken, across like all of the protocols that are doing DePIN. And I thought that was, that was really exciting to see. And it was like a really cool like moment, especially for, I think it was DePIN on Solana. And I guess one thing I can say is that like, if you add up all of those numbers from August, like if that 1.6 million, the Grass's revenue in August is bigger than that number, I guess, is what I can say. I wouldn't say it's like extraordinarily bigger, but it's certainly big.
That's exciting. That's super cool.
Yeah. I think we're in an incredibly exciting time right now, because like we're just seeing like really insane growth. We're doing some like really incredible things. And all the growth that we're seeing right now, it's really just powering the future of Grass, which will be driven primarily by live context retrieval. Like the way we kind of see things is, I guess like there are a few case studies historically, right? If you look at Intel, I love the guys at Intel. Like I don't mean this as like any kind of I'm not like talking down on anyone here. I just think it's an interesting case study, right? Or you look at Intel, you look at Amazon. Amazon famously was reinvesting their growth into the future for decades. And now they are probably they're certainly one of the most impressive companies in the world. And they've turned into like something absolutely incredible that nobody will ever be able to replicate. Like it is insane what they've done. And I think there's an argument to be made like on Intel's side that if, like they did a very, I remember as a child, you go to the store and like you go to like a work office supplies store or something, maybe around back to school time, and you go and you always want to go check out the area where they have PCs and laptops. One thing that kind of stands out to me from my childhood is just seeing those Intel chips and thinking, oh, like, this is a good computer, and like sometimes you don't get to have it, right? But right. I just think that's a really cool thing. And they really did dominate the chip market, and they made incredible amounts of revenue, and a lot of that revenue, I think most of that revenue was used in buybacks, and it made all the investment bankers happy. It made all the executives happy. It made all the the other market participants happy. But what happened? Companies called NVIDIA and AMD appeared and ate their lunch. So I think there's a huge lesson to be learned there, in terms of
the innovator's dilemma. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the early stages of a protocol, and I wouldn't say it's a company, it is a protocol, but like in the very early stages of business, whatever you want to call it, you really want to bet on yourself. Right. And in a situation like ours, what we're actually looking at here is a case where this maybe happens like 2 or 3 times a century, right? Where there is some Goliath, in our case, it's Google, right? Who seems impenetrable and is completely untoppable. And the general idea is that for all of history, like this counterparty will be like impossible to defeat. And a couple times a century, like you'll see a little chink in the armor. And why would you not go for that? Why not? And for us, working on Grass every day, it's like, why not us? That can be us. That should be us. And we owe it. We owe it to the people who were early, supporters of Grass, who downloaded, Grass, shared the ref links with people, like turned it into what it is today. We owe it to them to help that become a reality one day.
100%. I'm ready to run through a brick wall now. But that's true. I think the cracks are starting to appear. I mean, even just in the anecdotal example I gave earlier of like, I don't really search using browsers that much anymore directly. Like it's usually through a chatbot interface, because I just kind of trust AI to summarize results and cater to my taste better than maybe like Google would. Glad we got to cover demand real quick. I want to ask maybe just like one last question, because I know we're almost at time, about token utility, token value accrual. Like, how do you see the token playing a role in this ecosystem, both today and then maybe 5 years into the future and kind of more of a steady state?
Token's incredibly important. Like the token is going to be an incredible tool, I think, in making live context retrieval a reality one day. And in a sense, the end goal is to eventually have the token powering that technology anyways, almost acting like a way to transact and like use live context retrieval eventually. As far as just like the token's existence too, and like what it does today, I think network ownership is something that goes widely unappreciated outside of the crypto world. I think it's like something that the crypto community kind of appreciates and they get behind it. A lot of the world kind of needs to be educated on this, because they've never really been given this opportunity before to just kind of go and own something that they're contributing to. And it's one of those things that's almost uniquely enabled by blockchain, right? Like with Grass in particular, you go and download something, right? Before you, and for the last 2 decades, you've had a device and you had a residential internet connection. And some company out there has been using your residential internet connection to scrape stuff. Maybe to some people, it's not a lot of money that's worth. And maybe some people don't care, but for some people, they do care. That's kind of a matter of principle. And on aggregate, when you're doing it to like the whole world, it actually has a pretty big impact. The dollar value of doing that ends up being pretty big when you add up all of those. What better way to get people to kind of say, screw that, than to opt for an alternative where they aren't just, paid off for this, but they're given something that lets them own that entire process. Like, I think that's an incredibly powerful tool, right? Like, you can kind of contribute to a network, and in return for your contributions, you can own part of the network. And that's super, super cool, in my opinion. And you don't see many examples of that happening. I can't think of many examples of that happening outside of this, like, very small subset of like companies that are doing DePIN stuff, if I'm being honest. Yeah. And then, beyond that too, right? Like, there are questions around, okay, when you have this non-crypto side of the business that is, taking in revenue and then paying expenses, right? Like, you have to like buy servers, pay whatever, all kinds of stuff. With fiat, like, how do you make sure that still, stays true to the protocol? So like the way Grass is structured is like, there's Win Labs, which is where I work and where all the people that are building Grass are working. And then there's the Grass Foundation, which has a completely independent board of like just very trusted individuals, ranging from accountants to lawyers and like things like that. And the Grass Foundation acts as kind of this custodian. It owns all the intellectual property for Grass, everything from the code to the brands and like other things like that. And all the revenue that comes from comes into Grass actually goes into the foundation. The foundation has a bank account, and it's the one accepting revenue. It's the one entering commercial contracts. Even though, I or someone else from Win Labs might be negotiating terms of a contract and like helping do that.
Right.
It's all being done on behalf of the Grass Foundation. So there is no disconnect, I guess, between like there being some equity like company out there that's just siphoning off stuff. It's literally the foundation's the one running the show. It owns everything, and it owns all the customer relationships too.
I think that's what's important. That's what people definitely wanted to hear. And I think that's an example of how you guys have done things like the right way, even when a lot of DePIN projects or crypto projects have not. So maybe that's a good place to leave us off here. But Andrej, I want to say thanks again for joining. Super deep, just interesting conversation about where AI is now, where it's headed, how Grass is playing a part. What would you like our listeners to do in terms of getting involved or following along with your work?
Follow Grass on social media, but more importantly, download Grass and refer your friends. We're building something really special here, and trust me, you probably want to be a part of it.
100%. Love it. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming on.